We've had our first waiver run of the fantasy football season. A lot of people have probably spent way too much fab on some players that won't do much the rest of the season after going off in week one. Remember, the point is to get ahead of the game and get those players that are going to be good, not the ones who already had their one good game. So let's dig deeper than just yards and touchdowns, and let's look at some advanced stats that might suggest that a breakout is on the way, especially for some young wideouts. Before I get to those rookies that you might want to pick up in fantasy, how about a rookie who just needs 1 yard for you to win money? I'm talking about Caleb Williams. This week's underdog special for new customers is Caleb Williams just going higher than 0.5 total yards. That's right. You sign up for underdog right now. Make sure you use promo code ENDGAME because that not only still gets you this deposit match offer that they've had going, but that Caleb Williams, it's a free pick 'em, your very first chance to do a pick on underdog. He gets a yard, you win. You combine that with any other pick, a great chance to start off with a W. Just go to underdogfantasy.com or download Underdog app from the App Store, the Google Play Store. Try it now. Make sure you use promo code ENDGAME to take advantage. All right, now let's dig into some young players that weren't really picked up very often in the waiver wire this week because while the numbers in the stat sheet don't jump off the page, they do have a chance to contribute going forward and maybe show it a little something. Like, how about a Carolina wideout? That's right. I know it's hard to buy into this Carolina Panthers offense in any way, shape, or form, but there is some hope with first-year wideout Xavier Leggett. Now, this was a first-round pick, you might remember, barely made it into the very end of that first round. This guy coming out of the SEC had a 98th percentile speed score, a great athlete, and this is part of the help that they were supposed to get Bryce Young to get him, at least to show some sort of progress. Of course, they got Deontay Johnson as the veteran, but Leggett's supposed to be a big building block here for this new offense under head coach Dave Canales. And then all that went out the window in week one when they just got curb stomped by the Saints. Now, for his part, Leggett, 4 catches, 35 yards. Why should we be excited about that? I got to give props to my partner Chris for this because I was just ready to ignore that entire Panthers offense. And, well, I still need to see more, but if you look at Leggett, he was actually better than you might think, and his usage is what we're looking at. So, first of all, as far as the Panthers receiving core, he was 4th in routes run. That doesn't sound good because this team was not very good on offense as it is, and he's not even being one of the most used. But he was first in the Panthers in targets with 7, and he was first in targets per route run, even ahead of Deontay Johnson. But what's really going to surprise you is the fact that when you look at all wide receivers from week 1 of this season, Xavier Leggett was 9th in total air yards. That's right, somehow he got 118 air yards. So he wasn't just getting these little dink and dunk short targets, he was being used a lot, right? 7 targets is pretty good for any wideout, but that air yard usage is definitely good. Now, of course, the tricky thing is, are those air yards, those targets ever going to come to fruition in terms of fantasy points? We need Bryce Young to actually connect on these targets and to show that he is ready to really be an NFL quarterback. I know don't really have any reason to be optimistic after that week 1 beatdown, but these things take time. New head coach, still a young quarterback, young receivers. Let's see what happens here. I'm not saying you need to go out and add Leggett everywhere, but if you're looking for an upside stash, I think he's got to be the top priority. A lot of people are probably not going to buy into the Denver Broncos offense, and again, I'm not one of them. I haven't been really big on Bo Nix in general. I did maybe on record in a preseason video say something about the Broncos potentially being the worst team in the NFL, which I still think could happen. But look, even on bad teams, you can have fantasy value here. And of course, we're looking to beat the breakout. We're looking for a deep stash, somebody who could surprise us. Well, let's look at Devon Vele. Talk about surprisingly high usage. Vele in his first NFL game, 8 receptions and 30.8% target per route run. That ranks him 13th among all NFL wide receivers, not just rookies. 13th among all receivers that got at least 3 targets. That means he was up there with guys like CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill. Of course, the big difference here is that his 8 receptions went for a total of 39 yards. So, a little different here. This was dink and dunk at very low A-dot throws. But still, volume is volume. You know, when you're looking for some upside, I will always chase the guy who I know is going to at least get a chance to get the ball in his hands. And let's face it, we don't really know how this Broncos receiving core is going to shake out. Sutton is clearly the #1 receiver, and Josh Reynolds looking like the obvious #2 receiver. And Valet is looking like he's next in line at 3. Guys like Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin just don't seem to be carving out a role. If anything, they'll just be vertical threats used on occasion, but might not be too far off before we see Valet as at least 3rd on this team in catches. Of course, I say that he's already 1st on the team in receptions after week 1, and he wound up with more yards than Courtland Sutton. We'll see how that plays out. I'd still say Courtland Sutton's the most valuable Broncos receiver, but definitely worth monitoring how involved Valet is. He got a lot of hype in the preseason. That's why he made the roster, and he's already carved out a role. Now, I'm not a rookie, but wouldn't be surprising if you mistook Jalen Nailor for one, because you probably didn't know much about him unless you're a Vikings fan. No, he's not some late round rookie undrafted free agent. Nailor's now entering his 3rd NFL season, and he's already 25 and a half years old. So he's ready to break out, but just needs the opportunity. And now he might have it because Jordan Addison nursing an injury already. Nailor did pop onto the score sheet with a 21-yard touchdown in week 1. That was his only catch, but it was a good one. Now, Nailor's also a guy we've heard a lot about throughout training camp this season. This is a young receiver who, well, in his rookie season, just didn't do a whole lot, wasn't ready, let's face it. Year 2 was getting a little bit of steam, but then injuries pretty much wiped out year 2. And this year, hurt a lot. You want to see it before you believe it. Well, he did at least show something, and now he could be the #2 target there, because remember, if Addison's out, also TJ Hawkinson not there. There is no tight end who's really of worth in Minnesota. So you got Justin Jefferson and then Nailor. And look, I have to admit, and I know you do too, based on quarterback rating effectiveness, Sam Darnold was not that bad in week 1. Nailor might mostly be used as a deep threat, but he's going to have to get some targets and really has a chance to show out now. Don't love the fact that week 2 is against the 49ers, but again, we're looking for a stash here. Nailor is somebody who is technically a #2 starting wide receiver in the NFL. One more wide receiver, another rookie here. If you follow NFL preseason at all, I know you heard about Jordan Whittington because he was lining it up for the Rams, and of course, we always want to keep tabs on Rams receivers. This was a 6th round pick. This is somebody who did go to a big program at UT. Didn't have gaudy numbers because he had some other pretty good players alongside him, but he did show out in some exhibition games. In fact, he was tied for 4th with 11 receptions this preseason. Now, you know what that means? Absolutely nothing. Because if you look at the list of guys who are among the leading receivers in the preseason, it's a bunch of guys that are not on NFL rosters currently. Guys like Cody Thompson from Tampa Bay, Xavier Smith, also a Ram, except he's not a Ram. Xavier Hutchinson could make the cut in Houston, Isaiah Williams, Detroit. You get the idea. Now, just because Whittington was good in the preseason doesn't mean much, but he is on the roster, and Puka Nacua is on IR. So obviously there is an opportunity here. Obviously, we also know that Demarcus Robinson is the one who benefits the most. Guy we talked about all preseason. He's going to probably be their #2 target. And they do have Tyler Johnson, who it's okay to admit that you forgot he was still in the NFL, because I did too. He's a Ram. He actually had a lot of receptions in week 1. But that doesn't mean Whittington can't also have a role. And we've seen this happen before. This Rams offense always surprises us. They mix and match players. Guys will come out of nowhere and be productive. There was a time last season when Tutu Atwell was looking like he might be a league winner. Ben Skoranek had a couple of fantasy relevant games. There are players that can be good in spurts, and honestly, we don't know exactly how long Puka's going to be out. There is risk for re-injury. I don't want to even put this out there in the universe, but what if while Puka's on IR, something happens to Cooper Kupp, who is the guy that we expected that could get hurt in the first place? I mean, Whittington might have to be involved at that point. Now, as far as tight end goes, I was all prepared to talk about the backup tight end in Dallas because of Jake Ferguson's injury. But it looks like Jake Ferguson's injury is not that serious, so I'm going to actually go and pivot to a different tight end in the same division on a far worse offense. So again, bear with me here. You realize that sometimes we got to look on bad teams for some upside, because as bad as the New York Football Giants were in week 1, I would like to say it can't get much worse. It possibly could, but at least somebody has got to do something in that offense at some point, and it was just one game. Well, how about week 2 when they played the Commanders, the worst defense in the NFL? I think that might hold true for the rest of the season. Could Theo Johnson, the rookie out of Penn State, find himself with maybe a few catches, possibly even a touchdown? That definitely seems like wishful thinking based on the fact that he had 1 catch for 4 yards in his debut. But again, first game, horrible game by Daniel Jones. I think it's just moderately better against this bad defense. You never know, because honestly, got Malik Neighbors, trying to do his thing. You have Wan'Dale Robinson just sitting there getting all those little short targets and slants and hanging around the line of scrimmage. What about across the middle of the field? A big target like Theo Johnson not only could, but really should be the favorite end zone and red zone target, assuming they actually ever get to the red zone. And for what it's worth, based on the shallowness of that Giants receiving core, Theo Johnson wound up 5th in routes run among all tight ends in week 1. And his air yard total was also pretty decent. So it might take some time really for a guy like Theo Johnson, but again, deep leagues, dynasty leagues, you can't ignore this as a very physically gifted tight end who at least could have the opportunity to do something in this offense that needs a spark. And what about quarterback? No, I'm not going Malik Willis. I just don't see that happening. I mean, he could, maybe he should, but I don't think he will. I'm going to say this is going to be my favorite pick, and yeah, I'm cheating here. This is not a rookie. This is not a young, unproven player. This is a guy who's already had one of the best fantasy seasons for a quarterback in recent history. That's a big exaggeration, but you remember Jameis Winston when he went off and was just chucking it like a mad bomber for Tampa Bay? Yeah. Now, Jameis Winston could possibly be playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and that would be great for everybody involved. And while as much as we'd like to just bury Deshaun Watson and pretend he doesn't exist, it might be a little too soon for that. All these new allegations and the fact that he played like the worst quarterback in history last week. He's still a starter. He still could get better. But look, and it's definitely possible, if something happens where Watson is not playing quarterback anymore for the Cleveland Browns at this point, if that happens at some point this season, it's going to be Jameis Winston who takes over. And that would be great because he's still in the prime of his career in terms of age and ability. And this is a great offense. Honestly, this should be a great passing offense. Last year, the Cleveland Browns actually ran the most plays per game at 69.8. And in week 1 this year, they ran 70 plays, which would find hard to believe considering that they got smoked, but they were still out there a lot. Just Deshaun Watson couldn't get anything done. Maybe Winston can. Again, with this Cleveland team, you think the defense is good. They like to run the ball. That's just not true anymore. Under Stefanski, they have been throwing it a lot. Remember when Joe Flacco was their quarterback last year? Last year, they had the 4th most pass attempts per game. And in week 1 of this season, the 2nd most. It would be a roller coaster ride, with Winston, the turnovers, the ridiculous throws. But the production would be there, the yards, the touchdowns. They actually have some talent at receiver there now. We just need a quarterback who can get it done. So, look, you're in a super flex league, a 2-quarterback league. I don't mind stashing Winston right now, just in case something good happens for Cleveland. And before the weekend is underway, don't forget to catch our start-sit videos for every position. It's everything else you need to know to win. It's all in this week 2 playlist.